Welcome to Lead Live, a conversation for ministry leaders by ministry leaders. I'm Josh Franks.
And I'm Clint Berry, and we're the co-founders of the Lead program. Today on the show, we're joined by Brady Shearer, the founder of Pro Church Tools, to talk about social media engagement. Hey, welcome into another edition of Lead Live. I'm Clint Berry alongside Josh Franks. Good to see you, buddy. How you been?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Doing great. I can't believe the sun is shining in Ohio, so everything is good. The grass is green. So good.
It does not happen very often, so I try to get out, get as many walks in as we can for sure.
Absolutely. Man, how was your weekend? We had a fantastic time at church on Sunday. It was just really cool to be with the church community digitally. It was an experience. I loved every second of it. How about you?
Yeah, same with us. We're really enjoying our time online as a church. We're launching new ministries. We're moving things forward. Overall, I think people are really connecting with the Lord and encouraging their friends to check out what God's doing as well. Man. So we're encouraged.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I think we're really starting to get our bearings around this digital ministry sort of thing. And so that's why we both are super excited about our guest on the show today. I'll be honest, like when I messaged him, I thought, yeah, there's no way. He's too busy. There's no way this is going to happen. And then he was like, yeah, bro, shoot me an email. And I was like, come on. That is just it's fantastic. So yes, I'm a fan of our guest today and what he's doing in ministry. So let's welcome to the show, Brady Shearer.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Hey, it's the boss man. Man, where's Alex? I love Alex on the show. And I love it when he goes, and I'm with the boss man, Brady Shearer. Yeah, I love it. I love the show. I love everything, man. How you been?
Good, yeah. I spoke a lot with Alex this morning. We miss each other gravely, but still creating content from afar. And I'm pretty much a homebody myself, and so my family loves being at home. Last year, we put in an in-ground pool, and so yesterday was the first warm day. I'm not too far down the road from you guys, about 4 hours from Cleveland. And swam in the pool with the whole family yesterday, which was great. We have a 5-year-old daughter, and we were in there for hours. Of course, it's cold again now because we live in Canada, but we had the one day.
That's right.
That's right. You got to make the most of it when you can. We understand that from being from Ohio.
August
Brady, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So I run a company called Pro Church Tools. Started it while I was studying to be a student pastor in Bible college. So I've been around for about 7 years now, and I got started as a media director at a church plant. They kind of put a camera in my hands, a laptop, said, hey, we need you to do everything from design to social to video to branding and web. And I was picking it up all on the fly. I had some senior leaders that really believed in me. And as I was learning everything, I figured all of my peers in school are going to need these skills as well. Those that are studying to be student pastors, children's ministry, lead pastors of, smaller churches starting right out. And so I just started teaching everything that I was learning because I was picking it up. I figured everyone else could too. And so we created YouTube videos and blog posts, podcasts. And we've been doing that ever since. We've got a team of about 20 now, a few different locations across the continent. And the heart of what we do has never changed. We're helping churches navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. And the way we look at it, every week has 168 hours. Your Sunday service is, let's say, about one of those hours approximately. That's leaving 167 hours beyond that, where you can reach people, connect them to Christ, connect them to each other and to you, and make a difference, which is an amazing time to live through. I mean, I was born 91, and I didn't have any choice over when I was born, but the generation before me, we could meet in person, but we were limited to that type of ministry. Not to devalue that ministry whatsoever. I mean, we all miss it right now, but connecting to people at all times throughout the week through so many digital platforms is such a privilege. And so we help churches take advantage of that.
Oh, yeah. And you guys are creating, just whipping out week after week. You're just publishing, Tuesdays and Thursdays. There's new content being thrown out. And I would highly recommend, there are so many free tools that you guys have, like for our viewing audience, to head over to Pro Church Tools and download some of the freebie so that you can see how this stuff is getting constructed. I think it's that's how I've learned. I've just downloaded the free pack and I've started to walk through some of those items going, oh, okay, this begins to make sense. So Brady, as we get into like engagement is what Josh and I are really curious the most about. And so now that we realize everyone is online, I mean, everyone has been online for a long time, and now the church has finally gone, oh, everyone is online. And so as we begin to make these steps in, Josh and I began to think about like a funnel, kind of like, well, first step is kind of I'm just going to look at it. I'm just going to look at what you have, but I'm just probably going to scroll on, right? The second step is I might like it, right? And so I'm going to hit a like or, thumbs up or a heart or a smiley face. And then if I want to go a little deeper, I might comment on something that I like. But then finally at the end I'm going to share what I like, and so I'm liking something. I looked at something, I liked something, I made a comment about it. Is that the right way to view that progression? First off, are we waiting in that kind of look, like, comment, share? Is that the way, or do I have some pieces flip-flopped in your opinion?
I think looking at engagement as a progressive ladder is a good approach. We call it the next steps ladder. We think every ministry, when you bring it down to the brass tacks, what we're trying to get people to do is take a next step towards Jesus. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do online. That's what we're trying to do in person. And recognizing that it is a gradual, progressive ladder is important because I don't know about you, but the tradition of faith that I grew up in, and I was a part of an Alliance church for a while, a Pentecostal church, a Baptist church, just as my family and I moved around. And so much of our traditions in Canada anyways, came down to salvation moments. So we're going to create an opportunity for you to say yes to God, and that counts as a salvation. We did it. Those are the things that we track, and that's what matters the most. And again, not to devalue that at all, but every next step towards God, it's a paradigm, and it's this ongoing process. And, sanctification is a theological term for it, but there's no time in our period of faith with Jesus, no matter how far we are away from God, no matter how close we are, where, we're complete. Until the other side of eternity, we're always moving forward towards God. And so what we want churches to understand is that a lot of this stuff takes time. And when it comes to digital ministry compared to in-person ministry, digital, you're going to see greater width, but less depth. And with in-person ministry, you're going to generally see the opposite. One isn't necessarily better than the other, but they need to be treated differently. And so you move to digital ministry, your scope of influence is almost certainly going to increase, but it's going to be a lot easier to disengage from that content. Very rare to have someone walk up and walk out of service in person, but that happens with digital ministry all the time. And so you need to be working people along this progressive next steps ladder. The acronym we use is ACDC because it's easy to remember. A is for awareness. It's the base step of the ladder. And that's why we at Pro Church Tools create so much content. For you, Josh, for you, Clint, at one point or another, you stumbled across one of my YouTube videos, one of my blog posts, someone shared it with you, and you became aware of me and Pro Church Tools. And then from there, awareness, the next step is the C, that's connect. So you watched something of mine and you thought, you know what? I kind of like what this has to say. Maybe I'm going to like this video. Maybe I'll subscribe to this. Yep. And then the next stage from there, the D is to decide. So for us, that's where products come into play. So you decide to start a free trial of one of our products. And then the final stage, commit. That's where you commit to become a paid subscriber, and then that lasts for however long. For pretty much all organizations, the first two steps, the A and the C in the ACDC Next Steps ladder, are the same: awareness and connection. Because every brand online, every page online, every organization online, we're all trying to make you aware of who we are and then present an opportunity for you to connect to our brand. For us, the D and the C, the decide and commit, are different for a church. The decide and commit for a church might be the decision to reach out and begin a conversation online with a pastor. It might be a decision to attend an in-person gathering. And then the commitment side would be the volunteering, the giving, the joining the small group, becoming a fully integrated part of your faith community. What we don't want to do is rush people along this linear progression too fast. And we also need to recognize that as nice and clean as the linear progression is, in person, it never happens in a linear way. There's a step forward, a step back, two steps forward, one step back. We might oscillate between different stages. But the great thing about seeing it in that next steps ladder, Clinton, I'm so glad you framed it that way, is that when you see the value of all of these stages and recognizing that people are moving along them all the time, you can begin to create content and create opportunities within each stage. What you don't want to do is focus too much on that commit stage. Give, sign up, sign up, sign up. Maybe people aren't ready for that. Right. If all I did with all of my content was say, sign up for Nucleus, it's $100 a month. Please sign up, sign up, sign up. People are like, look, man, I just found your YouTube content. I'm not giving you $100 a month.
Right.
So that's why we have the free trial. And below that, we have like free downloads. And below that, we just have free YouTube videos. So giving people the opportunity to move along that progressive ladder and then being mindful to create content and opportunities along the ladder as well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So churches using online communication, social media, to just let people know about the next thing that they have going on. What I hear you saying is that is moving people too far, too fast. Yeah. There's other steps along the way that maybe some churches have missed in their social media strategy.
And it makes sense why we do this, I think, Josh, because like if we have someone that's attending a service in person, they're way past the awareness stage. Right. They're already at one of the later stages. Right. Because they've already gone through how many things to actually attend an in-person service. So we translate that in-person service to online, and we're focusing way too much on those upper rungs of the ladder. Where online, people are starting way lower. And so, again, understanding the difference, the nuances between an online service that's greater width, less depth, and then the inverse for an in-person service. And then, again, once you can properly frame it in your mind, then you can begin to make better and more informed decisions that will help, again, lead more people to taking more next steps towards Christ.
That's good. So really, we need to build the rungs of the ladder. So if we have, as leaders, haven't thought of this as, and it is a sales funnel, but at the same time, we're trying to sell the greatest story ever told. So don't get the pieces of the pie, wrong here. But we're just going to build a ladder or build a series of next steps that a person can engage with. So there are things that you do, like Brady, that you're telling us, like have people choose what do they love better, bacon or sausage? Like there is something fun. And people do have this like deep rooted, like I'm a sausage person, right? Or I am or best kind of bagel, like whatever it is, like you can move people along in those by just having a bit of fun, right? By putting a smile on their face and saying, no, bacon is way better, right? Bacon is always good on everything. But at that level, I think people dismiss the playfulness and the fun that generates because it's not a Bible verse or it's not inviting them into a deep discipleship element. So to start shallow and work your way in towards depth, I think is a great way to frame this up. So as we're thinking about any type of discipleship, we've got to think about steps in the pathway, right?
Well, it's also funny to me that we can paint some of what we do on digital as like, that's not spiritual enough. That isn't substantive enough, because we do a lot of that with in-person ministry. I don't know about how you guys preach, how your pastors preach, but when I'm listening to my pastor preach, and virtually any pastor I've ever heard, often early on in the message, they'll share a personal story. Maybe it's lighthearted. Maybe they'll share something that's funny, getting the congregation to laugh a little bit. Why are they doing that? Well, they're breaking down the barriers with the congregation so that they can build a rapport with the audience so that they can come in with something a little bit more substantive later. But it's all part of a holistic approach to communication. Now, if you're preaching for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, within that time frame, I can do all of it. But with social, we're talking about micro content. You're not going to be able to hit every part of a 60-minute message with one social post. So maybe on Monday is the more funny thing. Tuesday is the story. Friday is the, more biblical, scriptural, quote unquote, spiritual thing, and recognizing that it's all part of a holistic approach. Think about the programming our churches do. Have you ever had a student ministry that does a snow tubing event? We live in cold weather places. Have you ever had, a Christmas programming that includes like some type of picture with Santa, or there's some type of skit on stage, or maybe during Easter, you have something to do with chocolate for the kids. What does that have to do with spirituality? Well, from my perspective, everything is spiritual, but that aside, the reason you're doing it is because it's all part of a sequential understanding that you can't just move people from point A to point B. life with Christ is not a light switch. We have
That's
to
right.
see it as a paradigm of a step-by-step experience. And everything that you're doing is ideally moving people one step forward towards Jesus.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that is really good. So ministry leaders that have maybe traditionally thought, hey, when it comes to ministry, there's like private preparation and then there's public delivery, and that's kind of the rhythm of the week or whatever that looks like. And it's easy to kind of have those moments or events where what you've prepared in private becomes public. How can those folks begin to think about expanding those different elements? Like you use the analogy of a sermon having different points of connection and depth, and then expanding that throughout the week. What would be some good first steps that someone could take in order to think about not just having all of that lump sum preparation come out in one single event or point in time, whether that's your online service or something like that? How do you spread that out throughout the week and think, well,
This is where I think churches are in such an advantageous position, and an advantageous position compared to so many other industries, because every single industry and organization is contending with this new digital landscape. And if you are a real estate agent, if you are an orthodontist, if you are a lawyer, you're trying to figure out, well, what type of content are we creating for the digital world to connect new leads to us to eventually become clients and customers? If you are a real estate agent, your day job is selling homes and showing homes. If you are a pastor, your day job is creating content. You are already doing what the digital world was made for. You're just creating it for a different medium, that being the pulpit. You know, and we've seen different mediums throughout all of, human history. I mean, Jesus would stand in a boat sometimes to preach because the acoustics were better from the water so that the big crowds that were on the hill could hear him. He was being strategic. He was taking the message and sharing it. It's all about the timeless message and timely mediums. And again, advantageous position for churches to take the content we're already creating it and then repurpose it. So we do this with our content. I'll create a YouTube video that I'll script out and I'll make perfectly for YouTube. I'll then take that same information and I'll reformat it for the purpose of an Instagram slide post. I'll then look at the entire video script that I wrote, very similar to a sermon manuscript, and I'll find the biggest ideas and I'll take them out and then I'll tweak them a little bit to turn into quotes for Twitter or for Facebook. And then I'll screenshot the tweet and I'll share that again on Instagram. And then I'll take it and I'll turn that same idea into a 60-second or less video that I can publish on TikTok. And then I'll use those same ideas when we're doing a live call like this, and I'll weave in the ones that make sense in response to the questions I'm being asked. So now what started as a single YouTube video has been repurposed in ways that make sense for each individual platform. It's not as simple as taking that YouTube video in that 16:9 horizontal landscape and then publishing it on Instagram TV, that's a vertical video. I can't do that. And I also can't publish it to TikTok because TikTok has a 60-second limit. And I also can't really publish it to the Instagram feed where still images do way better. And it also wouldn't work on Twitter. So I have to do some work to reformat it. And that's where understanding the unique nuances of each different platform is important as well, understanding what's going to work and what's going to not. You might ask, well, how do we figure that out? Unfortunately, the really only way that I've found to do it is to be practitioners on these platforms. You have to be the person that is on TikTok, which is what I'm doing right now, and being like, I don't really know what's happening, but I'm going to keep publishing until I figure it out. Because for you, it might be like, I know what it's like to prepare a sermon, but now we're doing this thing on Facebook, and I am not too familiar with Facebook. None of us were familiar with Facebook. I'm not familiar with TikTok right now. This is going to keep happening. More platforms are going to keep releasing, and we're going to keep being unfamiliar with them. So you can either decide you don't know them and say, let the intern figure it out, let the student pastor figure it out, let somebody else figure it out, or you can figure it out yourself. And from my experience, the best way forward is to figure these things out yourself.
Yeah, and from there, once you have that figured out, then you're going to know how do you write that sermon so that there is a bit of YouTube content in there, or there is a piece of TikTok in there? But if you're just letting people react to the content that you're putting up, so I'm just going to preach and then you all do whatever you do with it, that's still crafted and created for a singular environment. Whereas you're thinking, I'm going to kind of craft and create as I go through, and now here's my moment for a TikTok or whatever else. So no, I appreciate what you're saying. Is just don't push it off, but lean in a little bit more and learn about some of these mediums. It does take time. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, I have to, as a pastor or ministry leader, I am trying to, plan and create and do all this connecting with people. For a beginner getting started, maybe I'm posting about, the next event, or, hey, youth group on Zoom at 5:00 on Friday or something like that. But how much time should I begin to set apart in order to, not only, just to post a little bit on Instagram and just do some shallow stuff, like just do some fun things? How much time do you think I should set aside, Brady, in your opinion? And I know we're talking about a massive gamut of, ability and time. And I mean, it's the Wild West, but just getting started, what would you encourage our leaders to be about?
I think what you want to focus on are quick wins that encourage you and build up confidence and belief within you that this can work for your context and your church. I don't know if you guys are watching the Last Dance documentary at all. It's the Jordan documentary. And
so good.
It's fascinating because in one of the first episodes, Jordan is recounting the championship basket he made when he's in college. So he is a freshman at the University of North Carolina in the championship game, March Madness against Georgetown. His team's down 1. They drop a play. Jordan's open. He gets the shot. He buries it. He says now, as like a 55-year-old, however old Jordan is in 2020, in the interview, he says, that was the day that I stopped being Mike Jordan and I became Michael Jordan. It changed the trajectory of my basketball career because I knew that I could hit the big shot when it mattered. And I was watching this and I'm thinking to myself, Michael Jordan is one of the most dominant athletes in the history of North American sports. Like, you watch the Bulls play and there was this sense of inevitability. It did not matter what the other team was doing. They were going to win. The Bulls were going to win. It didn't matter. Jordan was going to hit the shot when he needed. But there was a time in Jordan's career in his life when that wasn't the case. It took him hitting the shot for him to believe, maybe I could be the person to do this. And in the same way, your church has to go through a moment where, like, you do something on social and it works, and then you think to yourself, wow, maybe this could be the thing that makes a difference and changes the trajectory for our church, or at least contributes to accomplishing, our biggest goals. And so the easiest way to get quick wins on social are to ask questions that drive a ton of engagement. And these can be really fun. They can be tremendously lighthearted. And they're, in some ways, algorithm boosters, where you feed into the algorithm, you get a ton of people commenting, maybe those that wouldn't otherwise comment, and you just make sure you respond to every single comment. And so if you go to, I think, prochurchtools.com/questions, we have 39 of those questions. It's free. You can just copy and paste those into Facebook, choose a colored background, and press post. Do it twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and just commit to respond to every single question that you get in. And, some of those questions can be fun, like, hey, take a picture of your pet and post it in the comments with your pet's name. And now everyone gets to see the cute dogs and cats, not so much cats, that everyone in your church has, which is awesome. You could also post a question, hey, what worship song is really speaking to your heart right now? And then you get to see all of these comments come in from people in your church. And then maybe you create a playlist out of all of those songs that come in. You share it on Spotify, Apple Music, and now your church has its own playlist. And it wasn't one that you came up with. It was one that was generated by all of the people in your congregation. So maybe it's a bit more diverse. Maybe there's a bit more songs that you wouldn't have chosen, but there are people in your church that are finding solace and peace right now with those songs. And so again, you don't need to be a design person. You don't need to be a tech person. We're just talking about copy and pasting questions, pressing post, no design software, and then just committing to responding to every single person, even if it's just an emoji response. Sometimes you're like, I don't really know what to say to this. Just, reply, heart, reply, smiley face, reply, thumbs up. And there you go. Quick wins. Now you're starting to see engagement on social and you think, all right, well, what's next? And then you build on it from there.
Okay. So what behind the scenes, when you respond to those comments, because I think that's a key move, on Facebook or on Twitter or on YouTube, what's going on with the algorithms? What's going on behind the scenes? Because it seems like that's super important to respond to all those. But can you help us understand what's going on behind, other than I'm just being nice and I'm responding and getting yelled at by my wife because I'm always on my phone? What's going on behind the scenes, Brady?
Sure. So it's a great question. The way that social platforms work is that they are funded by advertising revenue, right? Facebook is free for you to use.
Right.
So the way they make their money is when us three spend time on their platforms. And the more time that we spend on their platforms, the more ads that we see. And thus, the more potential money that Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube can make. So what they are optimizing for is post hover time and the amount of time that you and I will spend on a post. Because if you spend on average 13 seconds on a Pro Church Tools post compared to 2.5 seconds on an average post because you're just scrolling by, what that signals to Facebook is that, okay, if we want more people to spend more time on our platform, we should show more people Brady's posts compared to others' posts, because when they see Brady's posts, their watch time increases by 10 seconds. And then if we can do that over and over and over again, now a watch time session for Brady on average is 13 minutes instead of 8, which means he sees this many more ads, which means our revenue goes up this quarter. That's the basic understanding of how it works. There are two things that drive more engagement. One of them is outrage, and it is the one that drives the most engagement because at our core, humans, we still kind of suck. And I will just look at a post of something that I disagree with, and I won't even say anything. I won't comment. I won't like. But Facebook knows that I'm hovering, and they know that I'm stewing on it. And they do not care that if I see that, it's hurting my heart on the inside. They'll just show me more of those things that outrage me because they know it increases watch time. But you can also do it with fun things, with the type of stuff that makes you laugh, the type of stuff that makes you comment. Like, that's why you'll often see family and friends, cute pictures, because who's not going to stop and comment on those types of things? So the way to form these questions is using something that we call pseudo outrage. So you're not trying to generate real outrage that will upset anybody whatsoever, because there is enough of that on our social feeds. We would never, ever, ever want to feed into that. Pseudo outrage, on the other hand, is something that is fun. So you could say something like, who's the greatest of all time, Jordan or LeBron? Yeah. Now, that isn't a thing that is going to actually hurt anyone's spirit deeply. Okay, right. Maybe some people. But the point is that people will stop. And the best type of pseudo outrage question is the type of question that people are very opinionated about, but that has no consequences whatsoever. Yep. So we can really disagree on who likes LeBron, who likes Jordan, or we can really disagree on breakfast sausage versus bacon. But at the end of the day, that would not affect our relationship whatsoever. Right. Versus getting into real outrage stuff when it comes to theology or politics or things that have actual, eternal consequences of any kind.
No, that's good. Yeah, that's cool. So the other day I posted, because, we're all homeschooling children. And so I posted of my son was doing homework, computer watching underneath the table, right? So he has headset on and he's underneath the table. And I snapped a picture and I posted it and I said, homeschool be like, and people were like, bam, 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 and I'm just like, how come I can get this thing? But to level that up, like, that's all I said, homeschool be like, and then people were, liking a lot. And then, grandma, comments, oh, I love that boy. Or somebody's like, that's how to do school right there. How could I level up that particular post? Again, it's my son underneath the table, homeschool be like, but to ask a question to level that post up to bring more engagement, how would you say, okay, Clint, you can take this up a notch?
Well, I think what you're articulating there is that there really are different types of posts that generate different types of engagement. Yep. So for instance, if you go to my Instagram, you will see right now basically two different types of posts that we've been leaning into. One is a quote post where I will tweet 5 different things on Twitter over the course of a weekend. I will see how Twitter responds to those, and then I will choose the one that got the most retweets, the most likes. I'll screenshot that tweet and I'll post it to Instagram. So in that way, I'm almost using Twitter as like a testing ground because, tweets into the feed, they just disappear. Not too much consequence. I'll then post that to Instagram. Let's say it gets 1,000 likes. It might only get like 10 comments because basically people are liking it to go like a digital amen. There isn't much to say there. Then I'll post a different type of content, and it's a swipe post on Instagram. And basically this is like, a big idea, a strategy that I've distilled into 10 different design slides on social for Instagram. That's the type of post. It'll get maybe 500 likes, which means it performed worse, right? But it'll get like 200 saves, 200 shares, and like 65 comments. So it got less likes. So it didn't go as wide, but it went way deeper with people. Yep. Because it wasn't the type of content that would generate as much likes, because it's not like a digital amen keep swiping. You got to like scroll through 10 different slides, read it. It's like, 350 words. You might have to comment. But it's the depth there that drives a different type of engagement. So for your posting, as an example, Clint, I wouldn't change anything. You shared a photo of your kid. Everyone liked that. That's great. That's not the type of post where you would necessarily optimize for comments or pseudo outrage, because that wouldn't necessarily be congruent. But understanding that social gives us this array, a wide spectrum of different types of content to post. And that's why you can look at your social strategy, and one of the easiest ways to measure the health of your social content overall is asking yourself, are we generating engagement across all fronts? The best types of social content and strategies are the ones that are generating both width and depth. And so if you are the type of content that gets a ton of likes, but not really much shares, not many comments, you might be the type of you might be like a meme account on Instagram. Huge numbers, but there's no depth there. On the other hand, if all you ever did was go deep, you might not be able to reach as wide of an audience as you might like, and you never would grow. And so balancing those two and trying to optimize for both verticals is the key to a winning social approach over time.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, because I think the only thought that I had there was maybe I could have said, what are your kids doing? Or show me what your kids are doing. And that would just be a way on my personal account, maybe to engage with other parents, and what homeschooling is looking like for them. And so maybe they take a picture of their kid hanging out of a tree, or something like that. And that would be another way to drive something there where I want engagement. In that particular moment, it was funny. And I'm like, snap, and then you put it online. Yeah.
What's great about social is that you have real people voting with their clicks, telling you what they like and what they don't like. And so you don't need to accomplish everything with one post. That post did well. How can you recapture that a second time? You could post a second photo. Only caption is, here's what we're doing at our home for school today. What are you doing? Put a photo in the comments.
Right.
You've already tested that idea. It's going to work. And now you can optimize for a different type of engagement. People have seen you. Great. Yep. Now you get to see them.
That's good. No, I appreciate that. I think what I'm coming out of this conversation with is there is a lot of trial and error to social on the different platforms, and we have to get used to learning and looking at the stats, not in a way like, oh, I only got 7 views. It's like, okay, well, that just didn't work for what I was, but I think people don't have a goal in mind as they're going into social, and that's why we're back to the ladder to build the rungs, right? And to move people forward. So I think that's probably where I'm beginning to really understand is that there's a lot of trial and error, but I also need to know what I'm trying to accomplish. So I need to be intentional. Here's our word again for Lead Live, back to intentionality, walking people forward. And what am I trying to do on this particular platform with the people that I'm connected to? And being reminded, Brady, that these are real people who are looking at your stuff, right? Because I think we've been so distanced from one another through social media to some level that we forget that those numbers represent men and women, children who may need to know about Jesus further and have depth. It's not just that they're like some sort of computer is happening, right? I mean, it's like real people who are touching buttons and are being impacted by the things that we're sharing on social media, for sure.
And just to jump in,
yeah, for
you're
sure.
100% correct. There is no perfect social strategy. None of us know what we're doing. Like, I already explained what I'm doing on TikTok. Today we crossed 10,000 followers on TikTok, which is amazing. But a lot of that's just carryover growth from all of our other platforms. I've posted maybe 30 videos on there. Every single time I post, I'm like, well, we're going to try something new and we'll see what happens. And I always use the analogy of pioneers in a new land. So if people came to my country and settled here, they were in for a rude awakening once winter came around. They could have gone to SoCal. They could have gone to Texas. They could have gone to Florida. No, they came here. There are no alligators, but there are crazy winters. And so what happened was when, some of the pioneers settled in Canada is they got to that first winter and they're like, wait, how are we going to survive this? All of our food is going to like dry up and die or freeze up and die. How are we going to make this work? And over the years, they just kept trying different things. Okay, well, we could can it. Okay, we could grow it in this way. Okay, these are the types of crops that we can grow that will sustain life in the long term, even if they go into slumber over the winters. And they just kept trying things. We've discovered pretty much all of the physical land on this planet, but this digital landscape is brand new. There's no such thing as a expert or guru of social. We're all just practitioners, throwing stuff against the wall, looking at the numbers, doing more of what's working and less of what's not. And hopefully that removes a little bit of like the shine. Like those of us that have more followers than you, we've probably just been at it longer, or we've just been posting more because none of us really know what we're doing. And every time you have something figured out, a new platform comes around and introduces a new type of content like stories or now performative short form videos that TikTok is resurrecting that Vine created. So,
yeah, no, that's good. Speaking of like different platforms, there's a comment from lead graduate. His name's Jordan White. Jordan, thanks for commenting here. So he says, with so many existing platforms and up and coming platforms, is there a worry about trying to avoid the next MySpace? Thanks for taking me back to like ninth grade, Jordan. I appreciate that. I.e. investing a ton of time into something that will fizzle out soon. Are there signs that a platform is shaky? So let's kind of take these a little bit. Existing platforms, up and comers, are we worried about trying to find, avoid the next MySpace, or do you just kind of jump in knowing that there are going to be people there and you're starting to create content? What would you say to Jordan on that issue first, Brady?
It's a really timely question. MySpace fizzled out in what, 2008? So that's been, let's say, 12 years since that happened. So there hasn't been a platform that has gained critical mass like MySpace had and then disappeared. That was during the first few years of social. We are now in the adolescence of social. It's a very different landscape. But with that being said, the fear of investing a ton of time and then it not coming to fruition is one that I completely understand. And really, there are two approaches that you can take. I have a friend named Alex Dion Wilson, and he's a friend of mine. We met in Hawaii. He lives in Kauai with his family a couple of years ago. At the time, he's a student pastor, and he's trying to break through on Instagram, on YouTube, not really seeing much traction. TikTok comes around. He's one of the first people to jump on it. He starts creating content. He's almost just posting the exact same content on TikTok as he was Instagram and YouTube. He's just changing the resolution and moving the caption so it fits on the TikTok screen. Well, as of today, he has 1 million followers on TikTok. 1 million. I don't have more than 100,000 followers on any platform whatsoever. And what he did was he took the risk to jump onto TikTok early as someone as basically a nobody online. And what happened was, because he was a first early mover, it paid huge dividends. He may have tried that on 2 or 3 platforms already that fizzled out, that never reached the mass that TikTok has. Yeah. And so you can be an early mover and recognize that it's high risk, high reward. And especially if you're trying to break through on platforms where saturation is high, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, moving early to TikTok is amazing. For me, again, we hit 10,000 followers today on TikTok. So that we hit that in a couple months. It took me years to get to that on Instagram. But with TikTok, there's so much more room to grow. It's like getting into real estate when a place is just booming. High risk, high reward. Yep. The other approach is to lay off and wait. And then when you jump on, at that point, it's going to be really hard to break through. Low risk, low reward. The other thing to consider that's super important, though, with these social platforms that emerge, at this point, because we're in the adolescent stage of social platforms, when a new platform emerges, it's because they're doing something different and connecting with almost certainly younger people in a new way. So with Snapchat, it was with stories. So 3 years ago, we're trying to figure out stories for like vertical video. It expires after 24 hours. What is this?
Yeah.
Snapchat didn't really ever hit critical mass the way we thought it would. Why? Because Instagram and Facebook siphoned off its attention by basically stealing its medium. If you had went to Snapchat and learned how to do stories when Instagram stories came around, you would have been ready and hitting the ground running. And to this day, in 2020, Instagram and stories over all the platforms are growing exponentially faster than the news feed because that new medium was here to stay. even though Snapchat in that way necessarily wasn't. TikTok's the exact same thing. People are going to see TikTok succeeding and reaching young people in a different way than any other social platform. Either TikTok will reach critical mass, or that way of storytelling, that 60-second or less performative meme style of content, will just translate over to the other social platforms. So even if you jump to a platform that fizzles out, you will have learned to storytell in that way that will carry over to other social platforms, which is why I always encourage people, like I would encourage Jordan, to jump to those platforms earlier rather than later, because there's almost always more reward to be gained than risk to be lost.
That's good. It's good. There's one last piece of his question. I'm just curious. Are there signs that a platform is shaky? So, I mean, I don't know if we've really seen any like become a dumpster fire like MySpace did. But are there any indicators that you're seeing that you're like, yep, this one, it's on its way down. Here it goes.
Well, I mean, we saw that with Facebook for a little bit, and then they pivoted to groups.
Yeah.
And YouTube a little while ago wasn't looking so great. And then it had a huge spike as Gen Z and millennials kind of made it their own platform. And we were like, we don't like to read blogs. We only like to watch videos. And so, again, we're in this very adolescent period where it's almost like, you know, what I imagine parenting a teenager is like. I can only say what it was like being a teenager. It's like just very volatile. And it's like some days you're like, oh, look, you've made it. You've established yourself in this way. And then other days it's like, wow, that was a really weird, unexpected decision that you made. That was not great at all. And so I also try not to be like Nostradamus with this type of stuff. We have not seen a major platform like this just disappear overnight. The only time it's happened post MySpace that was a critical mass platform was something like Periscope, that just became part of another platform.
Yep.
Snapchat Stories became part of Instagram when it came to that format of storytelling. So if something hits critical mass where you're looking at it, you know. Now, if you're talking about something like Quibi that is brand new and probably won't last, like that hasn't hit critical mass yet. That's just a bunch of ad revenue that's been spent, and we're seeing a lot of ads for it. And every year a platform comes out like that.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Josh, what other things are you curious about in your ministry at First, and what you guys are trying to do just for the local church in terms of social media?
Yeah, Brady, one of the things I appreciate you talking about is being aware of maybe different strategies for different platforms. And so, you know, for something like TikTok, that's a newer platform, what's the different kind of strategy or philosophy going into that? Can you just take and reformat your Facebook stuff or your Instagram content and put it on a new platform? Or do you need to think, you know, TikTok is really about reaching a new group of people. Facebook, Instagram because it's a slower growth. It's about just kind of continuing to impact those who have already connected. I appreciate you saying some posts in general are not deep but wide, and some are deep. Does that transfer across platforms as well?
It does. It might look different on each platform, but my approach is always when I approach a new platform, is to download it to my phone, look it up on desktop, and then find the people that are doing the best and just watch, or listen. When we launched our podcast, when we joined YouTube, when we started blogging, when we went on Instagram, we went on Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok, it all came down to me finding who was succeeding, trying to figure out what is it about the content they're producing that people are resonating with, reverse engineering that, and then taking my big ideas and formatting them in that way. Yep. It's almost like, being in high school when, the teacher would be, okay, you need to format your essay in this way: introduction, and then 3 paragraphs making your points, conclusion, and here's how to write your introduction. It's like your big idea is there, but you need to format it in a certain way for the teacher to find it acceptable. And so I love to do this also, not looking within my space, my industry, not my space. So like for TikTok, there aren't very many like pastors or churches that are killing it right now. So I can't really look to someone in the church space to then find out how to copy them. copy their framework. So what I do is I look at the fitness space, or I look at the influencer space, or I look at the music space. And then I see, okay, this is the biggest influencer or the biggest content creator in the fitness space. What are they doing? Okay, all they're doing is taking their shirt off. I can't replicate that. Now I'm going to move to a different space, and I'm looking at the music space. Okay, they're doing this type of thing. Oh, and interesting. They're using captions. Oh, interesting. They're putting a big universal pain point on their TikTok. So when people scroll by and they see like, how to sound like Travis Scott. Someone's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I want to sound like Travis Scott. Okay. And then I start to reverse engineer the things that are working from other people. And then I try them with my own big ideas. I pair their format with my ideas. And then I'm basically just doing remixes of all of these big ideas in my content and just throwing stuff against the wall. We are now doing quote screenshots of tweets and slide posts on Instagram almost exclusively. Because for the longest time, those were the two types of posts that kept outperforming everything else. And so I'm a big advocate of if it's working, keep doing it. And then continue to experiment. And then just keep doing what's working, but also continuing to experiment. And it's always both of those things, which is also kind of unfortunate because you can never really get to a place in social where you're like, this is what works and it's going to work indefinitely, because that's just not true. And I've taken this time of staying at home and really just begun like getting back into the creative lab of sorts and just spinning up new ideas. Being, okay, what can we try that's brand new? How can we push the limits of what we're creating? How can we make it even better? A lot of the time that comes from reducing quantity of posts to increase quality. And I know I'm on a bit of a tangent now, but this is kind of illustrating how social is so much like of an art form. And what I try to do with my content is I try to like reduce it down to a super actionable strategy so that I can remove all the confusion to get you to try it so that you'll see that it works. And then you believe that you can try something else. But once you get really deep into this stuff, it's like any area of expertise. There are rules to carpentry. And then there's, the expert carpenter who just is kind of in the flow of it. Right. Yeah. And it's the same with social.
So I appreciate that. As a local church pastor, what I hear you saying is take the time to download a new platform, maybe multiple new platforms. Take the time to learn how to use that platform. Take the time to figure out what's working on that platform, and then take the time to create content in order to post your own stuff on that platform. Help me out, man. Like all I hear is, instead of kind of dollar signs ticking off, I hear my calendar just wilting away in front of some of these things. So are there things like, are there cheat codes, hacks, helps, anything, resources that could help folks take a bigger first step that doesn't feel like, I don't know what the right phrase is, but maybe they don't feel like they have the time to do all of that would help them with the time piece?
Sure. I mean, pretty much every video we're publishing on YouTube, every article that we're sending out, if you join our email list at prochurchtools.com, there's 75,000 churches on there. And what we send out is the stuff that we've figured out in the lab that works. We've reduced it down to, here are the 3 steps to accomplish it. No, you don't need that program. You don't need to do this. Just do this, and it'll work. And then there's also our paid content that would be, even a step easier beyond that at nucleus.church. But we're trying to take all of the stuff that we're doing in the lab, reduce it down to the step-by-step strategies, and then only publish that stuff. Because we know how easy it is to get lost in the weeds. It's like teaching anything. A student comes in to, pick up guitar. I'm not going to get right into like freestyling within scales. They just need to understand like the different notes and how the 6 strings work together and how to formulate a chord, a little bit of basic theory. And then maybe, a few times down the road, you can understand the pentatonic scale and how it works, on the different areas of the fret. And then you can feel like you can start freestyling within what is the framework that works. So our YouTube content is super easy to approach. It really requires nothing from your part. And I think the reason that we've been able to connect with as many churches as we have is because, we do take pride in taking these complex ideas and reducing them down to extremely approachable strategies.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So go check out Pro Church Tools on YouTube. You can walk through all of the videos that they've created to help local churches and ministry leaders navigate some of these pieces of communicating, not just dropping your new online worship service now that you're doing and thinking through and putting it on your Facebook page one time a week, but what else can you do in order to engage the people that God has called you to engage with?
Absolutely.
One easy way to think about this, I've been workshopping this a bit in my mind, so it's not completely formulated, is in my experience, most churches approach social media like they do announcements.
Right.
So we're going to get up on stage. We're going to tell you what's coming up. You should try to approach social media like a small group where you're sitting in a circle and everyone has their chance to put their input in. And maybe you started off with the question. Yeah. You're the one that's like leading the conversation, but it's all about creating connection. Announcements are megaphone 1 to 0 or 1 to many. And a small group is 1 to 1 to 1 to 1, and everyone feels like they have their voice. So treat it like a small group, not like announcements.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. So my dad throws on a comment, regular viewer of Lead Live, which I'm so appreciative of. So thanks, Pop. So their congregation is streaming to Facebook Live. He's trying to figure out, we should post to Facebook, right, all through the week, right? I think there's two pieces, and Brady, I'd love to have your context as well and your answer here. I would suggest to him and his church, knowing a lot about that church, where I grew up a lot there, I would say just ask everybody, what social media platforms are you on? Because number one, if everybody's like, oh, we're just on Facebook, and the majority of your people are there, then help them out by posting in that environment. Now, if you're streaming to Facebook Live, but everybody is on Instagram, you're actually sending your content to the wrong platform, right? So unless you're just trying to reach a whole new audience and you're trying to do something completely different than maybe streaming to IGTV or something like that. So step number one is know where your congregation is hanging out, right, on social media, number one. Then begin to give them some help so that they can, when they comment or when they share, that there is a connection for them to be a bridge to the digital church service, right? So it's about moving that content into their space so that they can kind of move it around for you and help by commenting and sharing that. Is that the right way to think about this, Brady? Or would you add something to that situation where a church is streaming, probably new to streaming into Facebook, probably doesn't have a very good following yet. Their followers are those church members. But what if they're streaming to the wrong place, right?
No,
because they didn't ask the question.
I think that everything you said, I fully agree with. It's one of the most core tenets of the gospel. Go to where the people are. It's so much easier to preach the gospel to where the people are than where they aren't. And that might sound funny, but if most of your people are on Facebook, then it makes perfect sense to put the most resources into Facebook. And for those that are watching that maybe have a different demographic, to paint the broadest of strokes, generally 40 plus is Facebook, 25 to 40 is Instagram, 25 and under is TikTok, as of right now, 2020. And so if you are trying to reach students, it's TikTok. Millennials and young families, that's Instagram. 40, 50 plus is Facebook. Not to say there isn't crossover, but if you look at your church's demographics, that's kind of where you want to be. And so then you can just start thinking, okay, this percentage of our church is in this platform, so we need to invest this much of our creative resources, our time resources, our financial resources into this platform. And then there's also what you aspire to be. And there's really two sides to social. There's the internal side and the external side. The internal is, of course, connecting with the people that are already connected to your church. Mm-hmm. And then the external side is reaching beyond your four walls into your community and reaching new people. Rarely is there a strategy that will do both well. And so it's almost like two different approaches to social. And so not to confuse people, but the only other thing that you could consider is what you aspire to be. And so if you want to connect to the students in your church already, then you would want to go to where they are. And it can be as simple as that.
That's good. Yeah. Hey, if you were going to do a Pro Church Tools church service, how long would it be, and what would the ingredients be? I'm just super curious. Like, if you were just going to go, all right, I know, and you're going to like blast it to, let's stay on Facebook or Instagram or something. Like, how would you design a Facebook church service where you just went, I'm leaving the Sunday morning pulpit thing behind, and I'm going to blank slate, and I'm going to develop it for what I know about Facebook? How would you design it? How long would it be? What are the elements, Brady?
Sure. So we published a YouTube video called How to Plan an Online Church Service in 2020. And it comes with a worksheet, just a Google Doc that walks through the process of how to plan it. And it really begins with your desired outcome.
Okay.
So what is the thing that you want to accomplish with this individual service? And each one should really only have one desired outcome. What's an example of that? It could be to administer hope. People are feeling a little hopeless, despairing right now. The entire goal of this service, we want people to walk out feeling hopeful. A goal could be to mobilize the saints. We want to be the hands and feet of Jesus right now. Yep. The entire desired outcome of this service is to mobilize those connected to our church to be the hands and feet in our community. And then you want to start putting together different elements to accomplish that desired outcome. So timing-wise, we've found on YouTube the best time is between 5 and 20 minutes. So we'd probably keep it within that time. I'm a big fan right now of breaking up service elements over the course of a week. So I was a part of a communion service the other day with a church that I'm connected to, but I don't attend. A Wednesday evening. All I had was some water and ice and some dark chocolate. And we did communion with this church. It was just the pastor in their office, vertical video on Instagram. They always do communion on Sundays, but they decided to do it on Wednesday night. And guess what? I don't attend that church, so I never would have been able to do communion with them, but they did it on Wednesday night, and so we could. And that was a physically involved element of service during a time of physical distancing, which made it that much more meaningful. And so if you're playing an online service right now, introducing something that has a physical component could be extra meaningful. Maybe you don't do communion every week. Maybe you do it once a month, twice a year. Maybe now's the time to ramp that up a bit. And then there are also just, tech considerations of music and preaching. Obviously, preaching is so much easier to translate to an online venue. We have done another video on how to do worship for the online place. I'd probably only do one song if I did a song element within a service that included multiple elements. More than likely, I'd produce and release one song on its own. So I'd do an acoustic version of like Graves into Gardens or whatever that my church is vibing with. And then we publish that cover on YouTube, and that would be the piece of content for that day.
That's good.
And then maybe we'd incorporate that into a service because we already had it recorded. And maybe I do one of those songs every 2 weeks. And then, by the time we're out of this, we've got 10 songs, and then we're got different things to pull from. And I would also just keep experimenting. I would lean into creating moments of engagement. Another really simple idea that people can do right away, because I want to be practical here.
Yeah.
Use a question that you've received during this time as the springboard for a 10-minute live stream directly from your phone. Again, no tech required, super easy. A question has come in like, hey, Pastor, how is you and your family handling this time at home? So maybe you just go live 6 p.m. on a Wednesday, and you're like, hey, we got this question. You don't have to say who asked it. You can anonymize it. We had a person in our church connected to our church ask, how are we handling things at home? Here we are right now. We just did this for dinner. This was the recipe and the meal that we whipped up. And now we're playing with the kids here. Later, I'm going to do this. And suddenly you've just used a real question one person has asked, which means if one person asked it, at least 20 have thought it. And now you're creating a piece of content that is springboarding off of a question. So now you're not even having to generate the ideas. You're just using something that people have already come up with, and then you're just responding to it.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think there's, in this digital era, we thought we were in a digital era. Now we're in it, right? I mean, it's like we are all in. And so the amount of smaller pieces will be larger, right? The amount of posting, the amount of shooting the video. And I don't know, Brady, maybe you can speak a word of encouragement into us to say, it feels sort of like, man, I'm posting and I'm posting and I'm posting, and I'm not really trying to showboat. I'm trying to be helpful. I think there's a little bit of a hurdle sometimes for ministry leaders to get over because we're not trying to be like TV personalities. We're trying to relay a message of hope and the gospel, and leading people into intimacy with Jesus. So how do we get over some of that hurdle of just the thought process about I'm just creating all these all the time? Like anything that comes to mind there?
Sure. So we always say, living through the biggest communication shift in 500 years. That reference is to the printing press. And to this day, the Bible is the most widely distributed book in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
But if you read the history accounts of that 500-year ago mark, there are so many people resistant to using these books to share the Bible with the everyday person. Like, we do not want the everyday person to have a copy of the scripture. It is the church's job to have that and to then share those ideas with people. They cannot have their own Bible. This is not safe. This is a bad idea. This new technology, it's wrong. And yet, that's what launched the Protestant Reformation and has contributed to so much good in the world. And again, is still now the most widely distributed book of all time. And so we figured out the last communication shift. We can figure out this one as well. We're in the middle of it. It's not comfortable. It's not easy for any of us. We're all just trying things. We're all feeling like this isn't working. We're all feeling like this isn't making a difference. None of that is true. What you are doing is 100% making a difference. And the problem with digital ministry, if I can say that, is that you don't always know. Like today we started this call and I was introduced to Clint and Josh face-to-face for what I think is the first time. And they both share with me how some of the content that I've produced has impacted their lives and their ministries. Well, until an hour ago, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I've done and how it's helped someone that Clint has then used that strategy to help. And I'll never know until the other side of eternity. And because I'm a parent, I always think of Frozen 2. And there's this moment where, all hope is lost in Frozen 2. And Anna has her, signature song from that movie, and it's called The Next Right Thing. And she's like, this is uncertain. I have no idea if my world is ever going to come back to normal. All I know is that I have this one decision right now. I'm just going to keep making the next right decision in front of me. And the compounding effect of right decisions over an extended period of time is what creates this exponential growth in a positive way. But it also works in the opposite. You make the next wrong decision, and compounding works not in your favor, and your trajectory heads in the other direction that we don't want. So be encouraged. What you're doing is making a difference. Just keep making the next right decision in front of you.
That's good. Brady, I think we probably have time for maybe one last question, but let's take this one from Lindsay. In an earlier comment that I saw, she follows you on TikTok, and she's really grateful for your wisdom as she's coming from a small church with a small social budget. So let's answer this question for Lindsay. How do you recommend churches reach new people in a time where it's challenging to connect even with our normal people? So what would you share with Lindsay to encourage her?
Sure. So we've seen churches make great strides with Facebook ads. The beginning of that is finding the intersection between faith and community. We call these bridge events. Almost certainly not a service at your church, but it's something that you're probably already hosting every year. It could be a summer barbecue, could be a fall festival, could be some type of community-related programming around the topic of Easter or Christmas. Mm-hmm. And what we recommend is running campaigns where you only have to spend a couple of $100, and the targeting you use is a 5-mile or 10-mile radius of your church, and you just promote this bridge event, the type of event that the people in your community would be excited to come to, where they can get connected and exposed to your church for the very first time, but there isn't this huge hurdle for them to come to an in-person service and suddenly they're in this community they're unfamiliar with. Yep. And we have seen, again, churches make amazing strides with spending a couple $100, and they have been able to reach, dozens of new people that come to their events. And then it's all about follow-up and if people connect to your church or not. Social is an amazing amplifier. And if what you have is awesome and people are experiencing life change and are finding community, if you can use Facebook ads and highlight these bridge events and connect people to those events, your church will grow. But if people come to those events and they're like, ooh, this really isn't for me, no amount of amazing Facebook ads can make up for that. And so it's a great amplifier. And we have a video coming out that we are highlighting a ton of different case studies, but we've done this already. So if you go to prochurchtools.com, just search Facebook ads or search Facebook ads Pro Church Tools into YouTube. We've done a number of videos that walk through here's like the image to use, here's the copy to use, here's the targeting to use, and then here's how to do the follow-up from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, and
Brady, I've got a question for you. Are there things that churches can do as bridge events online now that maybe you can't get together and have your normal, Easter egg hunt or something like that? What's an example of an online bridge event that you could encourage people to attend?
Yeah. So what you do is you take a piece of content that you already created or you've already written, and then instead of using your sermon title, like, Grave Digger or whatever it might be, you frame it with a universal pain point. So we've seen churches do this with great success on TikTok, but also on YouTube. So the pain point could be like how to deal with loneliness. And that's how you title the video. And then when someone sees that, they scroll and they stop because they're like, oh, this is something I'm dealing with right now. Nothing to do with faith whatsoever. And then it's just a couple minute video where you're responding to that question from a biblical worldview.
Yep.
And then at the end, you create an opportunity for them to connect. So you say, oh, and if you would like to connect with us, feel free to like the comment below, and then we'll follow up with you. Or feel free to email this address. Feel free to connect to us on our website this way. Send a text to our pastor this way. And then create an opportunity for them to reach out. And so now what you're doing is you're meeting them where they are, going to where they are, creating identifying a universal pain point that every one of us has considered, or a great number of us have considered, responding to it from a biblical worldview, and then giving them the opportunity to take a next step from there. And you could run that piece of content to, again, your community, 5-mile, 10-mile radius, so that, down the road, they could connect to your church, put $100, $200 behind that video onto Facebook, and see how it performs that way.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm glad that you're talking about social media advertising. We boost our lead live and for like $40, right? So every one of them, we're just putting the $40 behind it. And maybe we'll gain just organically, a few thousand views, right? Like 2,000 views. We pay for that, and then we'll get upwards north of. Now, I understand a view is literally just moving, right? So we're not talking about a deep thing, but if they can see our guest, if they can see the Lead Live logo, if they see our brand on there, they may come back when the time is more appropriate to do a deep dive as well, or Facebook may show that to them again because of the advertising campaign that we're running. If they're hitting that demographic that we're shooting at, then Facebook will show them that ad over and over and over again because it knows that you stopped and you watched a few seconds of it. But you'll get some viewership, and I do appreciate. We'll send people back to prochurchtools.com, and the thinking that you're like, what does this mean? Like we got like a 1,000 views. Like, oh my gosh, like we're a church of 50, but we got 1,000 views. Well, okay, time out. But you really break that down and like try to help people understand the analytics, which I really appreciated for some of our churches that are just getting in to really diving into social media, so that they're not like, we can't even go back to our building. We have so many people online viewing our stuff, we wouldn't all fit. That's not exactly the case, and there's some demographic work that you guys have done to really help our leaders understand what Facebook is telling them in the reporting. So I appreciate you guys doing that work. Guys, we're to the top of our hour and a little bit beyond it. Brady, this has been a fun conversation. I've been really just looking forward to hanging out with you and just talking ministry leadership. So let's get into final thoughts. So Josh, take us into your final thought for this episode.
Sure. I think my final thought is I've heard a lot of people lately, church leaders, ministry leaders, use the term virtually. And for me, whenever I hear it, I just think in the context that they're using when they talk about virtual church, what they really mean is it's kind of church, but not really. And I want you to know what you're doing online is for real people, and it really matters. And so I would encourage you to take some real time to think and pray and be intentional with something that isn't just a kind of thing, but it's a real thing that really matters.
That's good. Brady, what's your final thought as we kind of think through the 167 and how to maximize and socialize during these other hours of the week? Final thought.
Sure. So I think right now we are in a place of imbalance. We are not meeting in person for many of us, and that is not what the church is meant to be long term. I think we were also coming from a place of imbalance where churches over-indexed, over-prioritized in-person ministry and didn't really account for digital ministry in the ways that it can truly make a difference. And so my biggest hope from this time is that we come out of it with a more holistic and balanced approach to ministry, that we, of course, recognize the importance of assembling together in person as the body of Christ, but also leveraging the power and privilege of digital platforms for all that they can and will do.
Oh, that's good. My family and I were watching Meet the Robinsons last night, and I love this scene in the film where the little kid is twisting together and he's fixing the peanut butter and jelly gun. And so he fixes it, or thinks he fixes it, and he starts to shoot peanut butter and jelly, and it is flying against the wall. And he covers his head and said, "Oh, I screwed that up." And Grandpa yells, "You failed!" And everyone is so excited. And like, women's like, "I've seen better than that," And so everyone is just like really pleased that he went for it. He tried to fix it. And he failed. I think my final thought is this. When we walk into social media, it's okay to give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, learn, grow, and try it again. So my thinking here is in a lot of what we're experiencing in the digital age of the church, especially pressed into it with COVID-19, is that we need to try, assess, and if we didn't do very good, then learn and then try again. Try it differently and try it new, but we do. We're back to having a blank slate again, and we can have insights that are given to us by Brady and other social media kind of technicians in this space of looking at what they're doing, not to copy it, but taking those big ideas and then pressing it in to what we want to communicate on these social media platforms, but just kind of taking them as going ahead of us so that we can learn and we can grow and we can try. And sometimes if you just fail hard, you just fail. Like there's no better video than the blooper video. So I think that's what I would suggest to all of us today, is that we really get over ourselves and we just start to developing this content that proclaims the greatest message in the history of the world, right? Yeah. Guys, it's been a pleasure being with you today. Thank you so much, Brady, for your time. We really appreciate you, your ministry, and being with us today. So thank you so much.
It's been a blast. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Josh, as always, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. Until next time, have a good one.
Bye, leaders.